Bonjour, welcome everybody. Welcome to this number 4th webinar of the MAB program. How are you doing? Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Miriam. Hello.
Hey, Ed. Nice to see you.
Morning, everybody.
Welcome. I see friendly names. It's very nice to see your name after holidays. Hey, Peter. Selamat malam, Purwanto.
Selamat malam, Miriam. Ya.
Apa kabar?
Baik.
Baik, selamat datang.
Yeah.
Joined the meeting. Zoe Russell
Yes,
has joined the meeting.
welcome.
Cindy Presand to everyone. Hello from Long Point, Ontario, Canada. Zoom.us has new window.
I don't know why it did that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's amazing. We never had that before, so that's an innovation.
An announcement.
An announcement. Yeah, we should do that.
Sorry.
Next.
I'm
Hello,
sorry.
Agathe. It's fine, Cindy. That was fun. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We're going to wait for a few more participants. Thank you for joining. I hope you had some break, and I hope you are all well and safe. We are still in this very strange situation. Okay. Let's wait for more people that registered.
David Salaus to
I see
everyone. Good morning.
Indonesia.
Space with Zoom.us containing Windows Zoom meeting. Full screen space. Button.
Zoom had some problem, and I think they have inserted some new devices that are really exciting that we are discovering together today. Welcome, everybody. We had close to 100 people registered, so we just want to make sure that everybody has a chance to join after this break. I hope you had some break holiday, and I hope you and your family are safe everywhere, wherever you are. And I welcome lots of people from different places: Nigeria, Czechoslovakia, I see Slovenia, Indonesia, Scotland, Philippines. Wow. So grateful for the people who are staying late at night because you want to hear about your work. And Nigeria, okay. So I think we're going to start. Yes, Canada. Welcome everyone to this number 4 webinar on economy, local businesses, Ukraine, Ireland. Very good, excellent. Welcome. Okay, yes. Philippines, you're most welcome. So nice to see all of you, that we remain connected in this very difficult time where one of the challenges is to stay connected and to feel that we belong together and that we can support each other. And the webinars are a good tool to do that. And I think very soon you will have all the videos and the ebooks online on our website. We had a break at UNESCO, you know, and we live in France, so usually August is a month where everybody is recharging its battery. We are back now, and we are going to continue teleworking also, because the situation in Paris at least seems to not improve. And we have to wear a mask also in the streets. So it's good to be on Zoom and not to have the mask. And I hope you are again safe and paying attention and taking care of your family and yourself during these difficult times. We're going to start now. Welcome everyone. Very nice to see you, all of you. This is number 4 of our webinars. It's a very important theme today. It's about economy. It's about local businesses. And I know that many of you are struggling, have been struggling because of the situation, because of lack of income and support. So we're going to get through that together and find share our solutions and expertise and support each other. And we count on you also to participate as the other webinars. You will have the opportunity to talk to each other. So please be prepared to switch on your microphone as soon as Annick that is up on my screen on my left. I don't know where she is on your screen, but she's here live from UK, London. Hello, and thank you so much. And we also have Laurie Bennett that woke up very early this morning from Vancouver, Canada, just to be with us. And we are grateful for that. So without further ado, just because the topic is very interesting and because I'm sure you have a lot to exchange and to share with us, I want to give the floor to Laurie so we introduce the team of the webinar and how we're going to work together on this one. Laurie, the floor is yours. Your microphone on, Laurie.
That was a good start. Let's try that again. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are around the world. It's certainly good morning from here in Vancouver. It's a pleasure to be back with you for this webinar, which, as Miriam says, is still focused on how we are able to inspire and empower as the MAB network. But today, our target audience and our theme of conversation is around engaging local business. The way today works, for those of you who haven't been on one of these webinars yet, is that we have some material to take you through and some conversation for you to have. So at various points today, you'll be listening to me. And at other times, you'll actually be in small breakout groups with each other, having discussions. And I really encourage you to use those moments to meet each other briefly and to share the amazing stories that I know each of you will have from your own regions and biosphere reserves with each other. I think that's really a strong part of how we have found these webinars to work, as the opportunity for you to have conversation with each other, as well as listen to myself or Miriam or whoever talking to you about this subject. So welcome. We're looking forward to taking you on this journey over the next hour. Just to give you a little bit of context to what we're working with here, really the objective of this series is just to help biosphere reserves really start to build communication capacity through peer-to-peer network learning online, which was something that we, as the UNESCO Secretariat, committed to doing as part of the global communication strategy that was launched a couple of years ago. And also now just feels like a really important moment to be bringing support into the network of this kind. We know that we're in a moment of crisis in many ways around the world, both with the global pandemic, but also slightly longer reaching crises around our ecology and our climate. With that comes an opportunity for transformation and for biosphere reserves around the world to really be a voice and an example of the kind of change that we want to see in the world. And I think the purpose of these webinars is to hopefully equip you to be able to carry that message forward to the various audiences that you speak to and mobilize in your own biosphere reserves. As I mentioned, a lot of what we're working with here is drawn from the global communication strategy. This is available through the UNESCO Secretariat and on the MAB website. But really, this was created a year or two ago to start to reshape the way that we communicate overall as a MAB network, that really comes from a set of core values that we've established and helps with quite practical examples of how we bring our message to the world in the right ways. We're going to be talking quite a lot about this today because local business is really one of the core audiences that sits within the strategy itself too. As Miriam mentioned, this is the last of 4 of webinars that we've been working on. These will be all available on a microsite with recordings of the webinars themselves and an accompanying ebook that gives a little bit more practical guidance that follows up on the webinar. The same will happen with today's session. So if you're furiously writing notes, please don't worry, there will be some support in this form coming your way. And just to say that while our topic today is local business, you'll see that a couple of of webinars ago, we focused very specifically onto responsible tourism operators. So we're not going to be focusing that much onto that segment of local business today. But I'll be happy to point you towards the materials for that if that's the key audience for you. With all of these webinars, we've been following a bit of a process of how we're going to learn together, which really has been going on a little bit of a journey of exploring the change that's needed in the world right now that we can see, both in that longer term span of looking at the increasing need for real sustainable development to be happening, but also right in this moment as we sit on the back for some people, in the middle for some people, probably towards the beginning for some people of their experience of this global pandemic. There really is a transformation that's happening in the way that people are starting to re-understand and the degree to which people and nature are existing out of harmony with each other, and the opportunity that exists to really correct that and start to, as UNESCO talks about, think about what the next normal really could look like, how we use this time of transition and transformation to reinvent and reinforce ways of living and working much more in harmony with nature, with culture, with local and indigenous knowledge that's going to support us to emerge from this time stronger rather than weaker, if we can. A few housekeeping rules for being on a webinar together with about 50 of us today, which is fantastic, it looks like. Please use the chat function to ask questions as we go through or to raise points that you feel are important. I may not be able to see it because I've got a few presentations going on, but Anik will interrupt me if something important comes up. If we don't have time to get to the questions, what we'll definitely do is pull those into the ebook and make sure that we're answering them there. So there will definitely be follow-ups for them in there for you too. Please be mindful of how you ask your questions. There's a lot of us on the call right now. That'll be especially useful as we come into discussion groups. Please make sure that everybody has the space to be heard. So we'd love to hear from each of you in those moments, but be mindful of how much of that time you occupy and how much of it you leave for your fantastic colleagues to share their stories with you too. This webinar is being recorded, as I said, and the ebook will follow. So I really hope that you will have access to those things following this and be able to even share those. If any of your colleagues haven't been able to make it today, please make sure that you let them know that this will be available for them to see as we go forward. Okay, so that brings us on to the topic for today of really how does the MAB network and the network of biosphere reserves engage and inspire local business to start to adopt more sustainable practice, to start to be more of an advocate for the biosphere reserve movement, and to help communicate and participate in this movement towards a more sustainable future that the MAB network is so active within. Some of you may remember that a few months ago now, we sent around a survey before we even started these webinars, asking a little bit around what you felt from your perspective were some of the biggest challenges in engaging local business in your biosphere reserve at this time. And I guess unsurprisingly, the piece that's slightly more pressing than the others that we saw here was just simply getting the attention of business in this moment with the message that we have is increasingly difficult, as many of them find themselves in extremely challenging situations right now, where the survival and certainly the ability to thrive as a business has been really affected by the global pandemic. But also in the mix, the things that seem quite challenging right now are our ability to persuade businesses to incorporate somehow the biosphere reserve message into their own marketing. And I know that some of that is a result of what we can and can't say, what businesses can and can't say about being in a biosphere reserve and indicating that that's where their products and services come from. We're going to touch on that briefly today. And partly it's an exercise in helping them to connect the biosphere reserve into what feels pressing and relevant and important from their perspective of running their businesses. So we're going to touch on that today a bit too. A big piece, obviously, that's so important is the role that we're able to take as a network in actually helping businesses to embed more sustainable practices into their business operations. That feels important, and even now we're going to talk a little bit about, despite the challenge that many businesses find themselves in, this might be a really excellent time for them to be thinking about how they start to step into more sustainable business practice as participants in the Biosphere Reserve movement. And through all of that, I think underpinned maybe a little bit around how do we engage them on a business case of some kind for operating in the Biosphere Reserve. And today we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about that, and also for you to share some stories about how you've been able to do that in your own Biosphere Reserves. We also asked you what you thought was the most impactful support you could provide to local business in your Biosphere Reserves during and following the COVID-19 pandemic. And it really did feel like a powerful story of some kind that's connected to their relationship with being in a biosphere reserve that they might use to inform their own communications and to strengthen their stories that they present around their products and their services themselves. Not far behind that is the ability to really bring them together with other businesses potentially who are already engaging more in the biosphere reserve and are able to be used as models and examples of really what best practice can look like here. And there's something that we really want to talk to you about with that today. And in both of those aspects, to be using that story and that engagement in the end to drive more responsible practices inside those businesses that start to help them be better stewards of local cultures, better users and respecters of local and traditional knowledge, and obviously to be using their environmental resources in more sustainable ways. So I think a lot of that feels very on topic, and I think what it meant for today was that we could structure our conversation today a little bit around, well, how do we appeal to businesses with the Biosphere Reserve message in the moment that they find themselves in? Quite literally, how do we get their attention? How do we help them to feel connected to the Biosphere Reserve? In some cases, I know it's just aware in the first place that they are in a Biosphere Reserve. But for those a little further along, how they feel really like they belong as part of this movement, and how we connect them to each other in ways that enable them to share best practices with each other. And with that, what's our role, and how do we use our message to encourage them and empower them into more action in the places and the ways that we need them to help progress the Biosphere Reserve agenda too. So really that's going to be our journey today. And as it so happens, and we were pleased to discover this, it aligns really well with the objectives that we have set out in the global communication strategy at the moment, which really speak to how we're able to inspire and belong, help people feel inspired that they belong and empowered through the way that we communicate as a network. So I think this is in the strategy, and I urge you to take a deeper look at it. But really, for today's purposes, kind of bringing the thinking from that survey and what it is that you're looking for together with the global communication strategy, the two things map onto each other pretty well, in that we can really think about how do we inspire business into action, as opposed to scare them into that action or guilt them into that action. What ways might there be for us to help businesses really see the opportunity that exists in engaging more deeply with our movement and with the kind of practices that we want to see, because they are mutually beneficial to biosphere reserves and also to the ongoing resilience and success of the business itself. So really, you will see that that's a part of the mindset and the tone of our communication as a network. In terms of belonging, we really want to be thinking, how are we able to persuade them to start to incorporate the Biosphere Reserve message into their own marketing, their own communication? How do we help them promote Biosphere Reserves and the action that's being taken there, because it feels like doing so provides their business and their products with something that will be more attractive, that will speak to a growing demographic of customers right now who are starting to grow a much bigger consciousness around some of the challenges that are going on in our world in terms of ecosystem degradation and climate change, etc. And finally, to empower them, our role as a network is very much to be active and to be practical and to be taking action in these spaces. How do we support local businesses to do that? By empowering them with the messaging and the support that we're able to provide. So here's what we're talking about today. And I guess a place to begin the conversation is maybe with a slightly zoomed out view, which has been interesting for us to be watching, and I'm sure many of you have too, as the COVID pandemic has been passing through. What's been the impact of that on the way business is thinking about itself, and some interesting statistics and themes have started to surface in that space. And here's one example that comes from BNP Paribas, a large Parisian-based bank, who have really been looking at how investment has been shifting through this time, and really noticing how investors are really putting their money much more into sustainability over this last quarter. And that sustainable funds out there have been outperforming the broader market, and some looking beneath that to really understand that there's something in what's been happening right now that has started to reinforce the relationship between sustainable business practices and actual business resilience. That businesses who are able to operate more in harmony with the environment, able to develop more resilient supply chains, for example, and a consumer base that is really starting to see more starkly that relationship between people and nature, catalyzed over the last few months by the climate protests around the world, headed by Greta Thunberg, and more recently really starting to look at the global community in a different way because of the way that we have been isolated from one another and facing a challenge that's really challenged us all around the world, and in doing so united us in a way that we haven't been connected in some time. So something is happening out there that is working in favor of speaking about the relationship between business, the economy, and our environment and our culture. And I think this gives us an opportunity to really start thinking about using this moment to have a different kind of conversation with local business in our regions. More specifically, some of the things that are feeling more important to biosphere, to businesses in this moment, that really sort of echo with some of the things that they've been most severely challenged by right now, which has been the reliability of their supply chains, their ability to access and to keep intact the various different actors and different materials that they need to actually be able to fuel and run their businesses. In the COVID pandemic, especially, simply just logistical ways of actually getting their products to their customers at all, but also now thinking about how they do that safely, and recognizing the challenges that come from more global distribution around business and starting to really focus around, well, what does it mean now to be a local business and to service a local community again? And the ability to appeal to a more conscious consumer, that we're seeing a trend in consumption, especially in the younger generations, towards people being much more interested in the origin of the products that they buy, in the ways that they have been created and sourced, and in the way that those businesses operate in relation to the communities that they're part of and the environment that they are in. So I think what we're seeing now is the opportunity for more and more benefit to come to business from being able to speak to stories of local impact within their communities, of products that are made and services that are delivered in a local setting within the communities that they serve. But more responsible operation and being able to speak to the way that they run their operations, the way that they source their products, recycle their waste, start thinking about the energy that they use, is starting to become more interesting for people as they're in this time. And obviously sustainable sourcing, the story, the backstory of where they source their materials, of the labor forces that they work with and the way that they treat them. All of this is starting to become so much more top of agenda right now that it gives us an opportunity to, as biosphere reserves who have been working in this way for some time in many ways and encouraging this kind of practice, there's a real opportunity for us to be able to bring some of that story into this space right now. Before we go into the more detail around that, I just wanted to remind you of, and I think that the lens through which we think and behave as a network across all the ways that we communicate, which stems from the set of values that really define how we approach our conversation and our action with the people who we serve. And I think talking about inspiring business by celebrating the relationship and the connection between people and nature, and the inextricable link that exists between them. Our ability to really bring people with us on this journey to create a movement, and how business can play such a pivotal role in being able to create momentum with us, of building belief in a more sustainable future, and by demonstrating the way that they are behaving and acting. Our sense of really modeling solutions. There's a lot of communication out there around the problems that we face right now. It's so important that people understand those. But as a network of biosphere reserves, our real strength and in many ways our uniqueness in this space comes from having operated for decades in a space of really helping people take practical action to live and work sustainably in ways that bring harmony to environment, culture, and economy together, and to be able to use those stories and share those solutions more widely is so important for us. And again, business offers such a great avenue for us to be able to scale up the kinds of solutions that we are pioneering in our biosphere reserves right now. And the simple act of connecting people together. We're over 600 sites all over the world. There's something beautiful about the ability to unite people across sectors, across geographies, that can start to bring business into a bit more of a sense of movement in this space than they might feel otherwise. So the tone and the shape of our communications really is guided by this set of values. And I think it's so important for us to impress those upon ourselves each time we have the opportunity to. So there's some broader context there of what's going on out there in the world. Maybe let's bring that down to the level of the network and how we really see local business as an opportunity to be engaged from from the perspective of our network. And I think what I'm showing you here is just a bit of a profile of local business that comes right out of the global communication strategy. As I mentioned, together with the network, we identified this as one of the target audiences for us to really be engaging with within our biosphere reserves. And the reason being is that they are users of our biosphere reserves. So many of them are sourcing their products, the materials for their products, the people who work in their businesses from within the biosphere reserves, and they help us to understand really how we can find ways to bring the economy back in line with the ecosystems in which they operate. And they can be fantastic ambassadors for the biosphere reserve too. You know, they have the ability to communicate with and engage with people who might not otherwise be audiences volunteering themselves as audiences of biosphere reserve messaging, may well find themselves influenced and inspired by the brands and the products that they respect, starting to speak about these kinds of issues as well. So we really see them in that space. Obviously, for them, what's most important is the prosperity of their business, is their ability to attract customers and towards them, to be successful and to generate the revenues that they need, and the health and well-being of their local economies, because that's what they really become a part of. So it's so important for us to understand those things, because those become the filters that we need to tell the biosphere reserve story through, in order for them to really feel like this is a meaningful story for them. And we're going to see a bit more about that as we go through. And in the strategy, we really see the opportunity here of really harnessing the belong and empower objectives that we spoke of earlier. So how we help them feel part of the biosphere reserve, and how we actually empower them to be ambassadors and to take action on sustainability themselves. But we're going to talk a bit about inspiring them too in this moment. Just also for your information, within the global communication strategy, we go into a little bit more depth here around the sorts of messaging and activity that really are most likely to inspire and empower them, and to help them feel like they're a part of the network. And I just wanted to touch on these briefly. So really, the inspiring and empowering message has to stem from the idea that their business benefits somehow from being part of the biosphere. It's the ability for us to connect their being in a biosphere with the prosperity, the success, and the resilience of the business that they run. And what we've seen being really effective in that space around the network are partnerships, you know, between local businesses and with the biosphere reserve, that help them reinforce the business case of operating in that space, and being clear on how we can support them to grow their business, as much as how they can support us to pioneer and continue to progress sustainable development. In the belong space of connecting people, the message that we have here is that businesses can communicate in some way that their product or their service is made in a UNESCO biosphere with love, that they can reference the fact that their business operates in a biosphere, and with that bring our messaging into their space. And we've seen that message on people's products, as I'll show you in just a moment. And we've seen it showcased through local fairs that bring together the local businesses within a biosphere reserve, and allow them to kind of showcase what it is that they do in this space within the context of the biosphere reserve itself. So there's parts here to be working with, and I just wanted to take a little bit more to talk about that belong message, because this is an area of real challenge that we've had historically, in terms of how do we enable, and how do we frankly give permission to businesses to be able to communicate that they are part of a biosphere reserve, because clearly the UNESCO brand is extremely hesitant at being put onto people's products, and in fact it's not legal to have it at this moment on products that are for commercial use, especially in this case. So we have to be quite specific about how we invite business to say that their products or services are created within a biosphere reserve. And I just wanted to give you a few pointers in that space, because I think this is always an area of some contention, and I think will continue to be even beyond today. But to be very clear that it's absolutely essential that we don't authorize the use of the UNESCO or excuse me, or MAB logos on any commercial product under any circumstances. That's very much in violation of the UNESCO brand and property. However, it is possible for companies to include a message on their products that communicates that they're created in a biosphere reserve that's designated by UNESCO. I think it's really important for us to feel and to understand that there's an enormous amount of trust that's at risk as well in doing that without due diligence. And so it's important that any company that is looking to do that, that we feel there's a real relationship between that company and the local MAB authorities, who are able to validate that they operate in line with MAB's values and principles, and that they do actually operate within the biosphere reserve as well. And I think because we can't go into this in the right depth right now, any uncertainty that exists in this space should be raised with UNESCO before authorizing any use of that messaging, and we'll be a bit more explicit about how to do that in the follow-up materials that come after this webinar. But I think the message from our perspective is it's a really fantastic opportunity to have businesses talk through their products about their origins or their location or their operations inside of biosphere reserves. But we just have to be quite careful about how we do that. And I wanted to just give you an example of how that's worked previously really successfully in an amazing example from Morocco and the Argenrie Biosphere Reserve, where it's about a story about a cooperative of argan oil producers. So the argan tree, which is endemic in Morocco, and the argan oil sector, which is a huge part of the Moroccan economy, mostly powered by manual production by women who work in very small farms in the country, and the establishment of a union of women called the Women's Cooperatives of the Argenrie. And the purpose of helping to create and bring together that union was really, how can we raise the profile of the really high-grade argan oil that comes from this biosphere reserve and communicate the biosphere reserve message at the same time? The way that happened was informing that cooperative to really promote the sustainable production of the oil, at the same time as enhancing livelihoods of local producers who are producing in sustainable ways. All of the argan oil that comes from that biosphere reserve state on the bottles that they are produced within the Argenrie Biosphere Reserve, which is designated by UNESCO, and that's something that the cooperative and the farmers feel very strongly is an asset to being able to communicate in that space. And as a result of being able to work with local business in that way to both communicate their existence in a biosphere reserve and to be able to, through that relationship, support the sustainable production of that product, that's really the kind of the gold standard of where we're trying to get to in terms of our relationships with local business in this way. And what they've seen there is that the number of cooperatives that are working in this way is rising steadily, and at the household level, there's even reliable income that these women are now able to access throughout the year, which is something that was increasingly complex for them before they started to really bolster their marketing activities in the way that this story shares about. And again, this is inside that global communication strategy, so please read it in a little bit more depth there. Okay, you'll be delighted to hear it's almost time for me to stop talking at you for a little while and to give you the opportunity to have some conversation with each other. I think just to recap briefly on what we've been through is really this potentially is a really important moment to be starting to engage with biosphere reserves around, with local business around the benefits that can come from operating inside a biosphere reserve. But to do that, we really have to recognize for ourselves what are the benefits of being in a biosphere reserve that do appeal to local businesses, and can we be clear on those so that we communicate the importance of that in a language that business understands. And to give us the opportunity to play in that space a little bit, and to maybe draw from some of what you've seen here from the strategy or heard from what I've been saying, I want to invite you to spend a little bit of time in smaller groups, just really sharing your thoughts on these two questions you see in front of you here. And these are really anchored in, if we can answer these questions, they're going to really help us to get the attention of local business right now, and to help them feel like they are part of the biosphere movement in a more explicit way. So the first question is really, what are the benefits to operating in a business as a business in your biosphere reserve? Can you share what you think some of those are, or some of the things that have appealed most to local businesses in your biosphere reserve? And to think of that through a slightly different lens, how do you think customers of those businesses might feel if and when they know that the product that they're enjoying comes from a biosphere reserve? What might that inspire in the customer? Because that's so often a great route into inspiring business, is to be able to have something that they believe their customers is going to appeal to their customers as well. So I'd like you to consider these two questions. We've only got a short amount of time to be working with those. So you're going to be going into breakout group rooms now. So you will automatically be moved from this plenary into a smaller group with a smaller number of you. I encourage you, please, to make sure that your microphones are unmuted so that you can speak to each other in that forum. When you get into that group, you will notice on the Zoom screen that your group will have a number. Anik, I wonder if you could share in this moment the worksheets that we have for people to be able to complete while they're in their groups. If everybody could look into the chat feed and click on the link that you see in the chat feed there. That will open up a set of Google Slides for you, which you will be able to see. There's a series of worksheets in there. When you're in your groups, please have the conversation with each other about the questions that you see here. And please, we would love if one of you in the group would be able to capture some of the conversation that you're having in the worksheet that you see in front of you. To know which worksheet is yours, you'll notice when you're in your group, there will be the number of that group will be labeled at the top of the window that you're in. And you'll find on the worksheets, on the top right-hand corner of the worksheets, there's a corresponding number there. So please add your thoughts into that space. We're so excited to see what you come up with here and to be able to bring that into the ebook that we create afterwards. I'm going to give you 6 or 7 minutes in that group to have that conversation. So I really hope that you have the opportunity to each share a little bit with each other. Anik, when you're ready, please, could you take people to their groups?
Hello to all the folks here. This is your breakout room. So you're still in the main room, but this will be your group for conversation. So feel free to turn your video on and unmute and use the worksheets to have your conversation together.
Hi everyone, my name is Cindy Kun and I'm from the Kruger-Canyon Biosphere region in South Africa. I actually lead up a project that focuses on local economic development, and we can definitely see the huge impact that small businesses has on the biosphere and vice versa, and would love to have some feedback from everyone else.
Hi, this is Julie Sarvin from the Frontenac Arch Biosphere in Canada. I think as far as these worksheets go, these are a couple of questions that I think I've been trying to answer for a while or figure out the answers to. So I'm just kind of here to see what other people have to say because I struggle with these questions.
I think just a little bit of input on the first question of what benefits do small businesses get. I think it gives them a sense of unity, especially in our area where we've got quite a lot of rural areas and we have smallholder farmers or smallhold businesses. You know, trying to form just as one, you can't make a lot of impact, but when you come together under the name of the biosphere, I think it creates a lot more impact for them and it gives them credibility in some instances.
Thanks, Cindy.
Has anybody else got any feedback on what they think the benefits are for the businesses?
Okay, welcoming back everyone, Laurie. Yeah.
Okay, I bet that was quick, but I hope you had the opportunity to have a little conversation with each other around these, and that the questions were starting to surface some interesting pieces that you could share with each other. The good news is you're not done talking to each other just yet. I wanted to just play back just very briefly some really great things that I started to see coming up in what you had been talking about. That some of the benefits that you're able to put forward to business is really ability to kind of award them and recognize them for doing really fantastic work that is sustainable, which I love that idea. And that for customers of businesses to know that their biosphere, that products are produced in a biosphere reserve, it can really help them feel like the biosphere belongs to them, and that they're part of something as well, which is a really beautiful idea. Before we let you go through, I actually wanted to give you a bit more opportunity to be in your groups, and to continue to have the conversation, but to move it slightly into a different space, which is to start thinking about how we might start to empower business in this space. So what I'd like you to do for the next 5 minutes or so in your groups is to think, each of you, around, is there one business in your biosphere reserve right now who you feel is a real champion of the kind of practices that we want to see more of from other businesses in your space? And is there anything you could do or have done that you feel could really help them to inspire other businesses in there to follow in their footsteps? Because I think we know that business is a great messenger for business. So to start to think about this, because this is what's going to start us to create a bit of a movement between us of businesses that can work in this way. So please, I want to put you back into those same groups. Please continue the conversation. If you, in that same worksheets document, if you scroll down, you'll notice that there are some worksheets that correspond to these questions as well. And I encourage you and invite you, please, to put your thoughts into that space. So, Anik, if you wouldn't mind sending people back into their groups for a little bit more conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone in this group. This will be your group for the discussion, so please enjoy the conversation together and connecting with each other.
Does anyone have any businesses who are champions of sustainable practices? For me, I'm not really sure on this one. So does anyone else have anything?
Hello, good evening from the Philippines here, John Cabristante. Can I share a little bit?
Please, yes.
Okay, because Palawan is famous for tourism. It's the tourism establishments, the tourism industry has been flourishing in this part of the world. And then we have a business, we have a establishment that promotes sustainable tourism. It is a chain of hotels and resorts, but they are promoting sustainable practices being situated in the biosphere reserve. They are basically going green. They are observing the carrying capacity of the area, doing sustainable development activities with the communities, and using or obtaining materials from the local people that they serve to their tourists, to their visitors in this area. That's why I think they are one actually, this establishment, this group, we call it the Leo Estates. It's a group of a member of the Ayala group of companies, one of the big companies in the Philippines, but devoted to promoting sustainable tourism in Palawan. They are our champion in sustainable development in the biosphere reserve. Thank you.
That's amazing. I think it's pretty great to be able to have a large number of hotels and resorts for your area practicing sustainable, going green. That's pretty great.
Thank you. But there are only a few of them, considering that there are lots of small tourism establishments in other parts of the BR. Our BR is such a large area because it comprises more than 1,000 hectares, covering 1,000 islands, about 1,700 islands, covering more than 1.5 million hectares.
How do you think people could actually get influence from them? How can they maybe or what can you leverage to make other tourism operations, you know, follow their footsteps?
Actually, they started organizing they joined a group in the area in the area by promoting sustainable practices, going green, minimizing use of single-use plastics, using natural locally available materials. They are maintaining the website actually, and encouraging tourism establishments, because there are a few hundred tourism establishments in the same area. That's why I think they are leading by example, because they encourage, they get involved, they organize tourism establishments to also follow their practice, and they are even training local champions and other tourism stakeholders. They are really promotes these activities, and we are also one with them because we support them in terms of subsequent planning activities, even encouraging them to work towards payments for ecosystem services so that we can have sustainable financing for the activities that will lead to sustainability of the tourism industry.
That is amazing. I really like that.
Welcome back. That was short.
Thank you.
Laurie?
Yes, indeed. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for that. I know that this time is short, but I hope that you were able to have some productive conversation with each other nonetheless. Before we close out today, I just wanted to address two questions that came up in the chat as we were going through the presentation. One being just a reminder of where the responsible tourism webinar materials are. Those are on their way. As soon as they're ready, we'll be sending a message out to all of you so that you will be directed to where those are. We're trying to create a place where we can keep all the materials from these webinars in one spot that you'll be able to go and access them from. So please appreciate your patience. It's on its way shortly. And David Solos asked about whether it would be possible for us to create some kind of educational resource that helps businesses understand really what it means to be a sustainable, responsible business. and maybe start to think about compiling a list or a series of the businesses who are doing a really great job in this space that we might be able to use as a resource. And I think there's a fantastic ideas. I think Miriam's been talking about similar things, so I think there's some great possibility for that, and we'll try to include some of that at least in the ebook that follows this webinar in terms of some resources that you might use in that space that already exist. But what a fantastic idea, and what a great thing it would be to have a set of global businesses that we could recognize and look at across in biosphere reserves across the world who are great examples of this kind of work in practice. But from me this morning, thank you so much. I really appreciate your attendance and your activity in those breakout rooms. I'm just going to pass it back to Miriam to say a final thank you. Miriam, over to you.
Thank you very much to Laurie and to Annick and to all of you for participating and engaging. I know it's going very quickly. Believe me, even when you organize a webinar like that, it goes very quickly from our side. But just to follow up on the best practices and the guidelines, I think it's an excellent idea. And if any of you is volunteering to submit some examples and champions, we will continue this conversation, especially that, as you know, we are celebrating next year 50th anniversary of the MAB program. I think it's a unique opportunity to showcase and recognize and thank and acknowledge all of you, but also all the partners, including the businesses and the local businesses that are doing and engaging sustainability as champions, as leaders that can inspire beyond the boundary of the biosphere reserve. So I think this is just the beginning of this conversation. We want to interact with you. Again, that we stay connected in these difficult and challenging times, that beyond the borders we feel as a global network. And we will continue now with the French version of this webinar, and tomorrow the Spanish one. We will have other webinars until the end of the year. So we will ask you by email which teams you would like to have us organize for you until the end of the year. And it will include how we celebrate together the 50th anniversary based on the webinars that we have done so far and your ideas and suggestions. Till we meet again, physically, I hope, sooner than later. Be safe, be well, take care of yourself, your family, and reach out to the Secretariat if you need any help and support. We care about you and we thank you for everything you're doing. Well, take care. Merci beaucoup.